what are some of the questions that you would recommend someone who is single or who's dating and desires to be married? What are some of the questions that you think that they should ask this particular this person of interest? What would be some great things to make sure to see? Is this someone that could potentially be someone that I could spend my life with and do this thing called marriage and life journey?
Yeah. So first of all, I want to say, when we say questions, this is not like some type of interview interrogation process. Like how people are like, what do you bring to the table? Like that. We need to have these conversations organically. Okay. This is not a transactional relationship. We are trying to decide if this is somebody I want to build a life with. So have genuine conversations where you're trying to get that person in through those conversations. And over time, I don't think that everything needs to be discussed in that very first date. But maybe as you're continuing to converse over the phone or the next time you meet up or whatever the case may be. Obviously, we're not saying wait months with somebody who ain't, all kind of red flags are going off. However, I think that don't try to force everything in that first conversation. Let things organically flow, and some of these answers may come naturally out of the conversation. So with that said, I think that you need to be asking questions like, first of all, for me personally, I'm having conversations about spirituality. Are you a Christian? Because I do believe that you need to be equally yoked with your partner if you're a Christian. Two, you need to be talking about, do you want to have kids? There's some people who are feel like, I don't want to have kids, or I only want one kid, I only want two kids, and you don't want to enter into a marriage and then are resentful years later because you wanted kids or they want kids now and they said that they didn't, initially. So kind of having those conversations in the beginning and fleshing out where you stand on building a family, and then you can start to talk about your childhood. You want to know, like, what are some experiences that that person has gone through that may be traumatic and maybe have shaped who they are today. Finances, not necessarily how much you make.
We can't ask how much you make.
I feel like, so honestly, I'm very guarded about my own salary. And so I can't imagine somebody just straight up asking me that on especially at first met. Now, honestly, I really believe that it's honestly more important to have a discussion about where are your values in terms of money, because somebody could be making six figures, but they broke because they buying all kind of stuff that they really shouldn't be doing. So what are your values in terms of money? How are you spending your money? Are you, loading up credit cards and, you got debt out the boot, because you're trying to keep up with the Joneses or whatever the case may be. So having conversations that talk about maybe your goals in terms of building wealth. And those are the type of things that can naturally flow out where you can say, okay, we ain't on the same page about our goals for our life and our family, so this isn't going to work. And obviously fidelity. Nowadays they say you need to be asking, do you got a wife or kids at home that I don't know?
How crazy is that? What? My friend, I was out with my friend. I think we were in Jacksonville, and she was like, you met somebody. She's like, did you ask if they were married? I was like, why would this person even be out? Why would they even approach me if they were married? Like, she was like, no, you need to ask. Like, so it's okay.
That's how I would say. I ain't gonna lie. I do thank God that I'm not in today's dating pool because it's kind of rough out here from what I hear. But that is something that I've heard that you need to ask and clarify. Like, no, or is there somebody that think they married to you? But I feel like a lot of conversations can organically happen if you're showing a genuine interest in somebody, getting to know about them. What are their goals? What are their plan? And it doesn't necessarily have to be like, what's your 5-year plan? But what are your dreams? What are your dreams for your life? What are your desires? What do you hope that you are going to achieve? Naturally, I feel like some of the things that we may consider as red flags or green flags will come out if you've taken time to actually be selective about who you're dating, right? We ain't just saying yes to everybody, but if that person has been referred to you because y'all got hooked up or you saw them on a dating website or whatever the case may be, but aligning values of some sort before you meet and then kind of diving deeper into those conversations organically. And I feel like you can start to tap into getting to know who that person is, what their background is, what is their dreams for the future. And you can kind of make a decision from there, whether or not you all are aligned in terms of your values and goals. And I feel like you'll make a much wiser decision from that place than just talking about, oh, you make $150,000 a year.
Okay, so we're not supposed to ask day one. So, what's your business plan? What's your 5 year, 10 year? What's all of your trauma? Okay, I want everything. Like from 2 years old. Have you gone to therapy? If you don't have a year of therapy, then we don't need to have a
Oh
conversation.
gosh.
Go back to the therapist. Add that.
No.
Go to the HSA plan. You can get it reimbursed. So, you're
Stop.
not supposed to ask all of that. So it sounds like we need to have intentional conversations, which makes sense. And we ask the important questions around their character. But I also hear you talking about communication. Now, one thing that I've always been very curious about is I hear people, especially, okay, we're just gonna go ahead and just be authentic all on this podcast. So when you're single, sometimes, and if you're especially if you're in a relationship, some people, especially regarding sex, are like, it's very easy. It's all the time. Any from work, at home, in the car, like wherever you at. But then when you decide, when you get married, I'm hearing so many couples who are having to schedule sex with their partner and intimacy. I'm hearing of people stepping outside of their marriages because there's not enough of that in there. So what happens inside of being single when you desire this person, you're thinking about them all night? I mean, you falling asleep on the phone and you texting each other, you wake up and the text message is incomplete because you just was so in love with that person. You fell asleep texting them and you're just all engulfed in this experience with this person. And then boom, you get married, let's say 2 years, 5 years, 10 years later, 15 years, 20 years, and you're like, where's the intimacy? And you have to schedule it. So what happens and how do you keep what happens in the transition from single to married, and then what do you do in your space now as a marriage to keep things lively and to make sure that you're keeping it fresh?
So, first of all, to answer that first part, I feel like we as humans kind of process everything new versus old in that manner. So when something is new, you're excited about it, you're loving it, you want to be around it all the time. If you can even picture it in terms of, let's say, a new car. Oh, I love this new car. You're checking out all the gadgets, and I want to go for a drive and ride with the sunroof back. And you're so interested. And then as you, have it a little bit longer, it becomes less interesting. I think that's kind of our, I don't want to say sinful nature because it's not sinful to want something new, right? To have that natural human desire or the experience of something new. But I think that it is part of just being a human, is that when we first get with something and it feels fresh, it feels new, there's an excitement. And I believe it's even like biologically, it's something happening in our body. It's, like I can't remember what the phrase is, but it's just like adrenaline, right? I'm excited about this new thing to experience. And then as that new thing becomes old, the excitement kind of wears off. And so then you have to do things to maintain it. So just like that old car, now I got to make sure I keep all of the, the specs up to date and keep the engine running.
Just trying to do.
But the thing is, people tend to think of that as like a negative, like now I got to work a little bit harder. But I feel like that's part of, like you said, the transition in life and with anything. And I don't know why we are so hard on relationships when it comes to what we expect of them, because in almost everything that we do in life, it kind of mimics the same response. And so, as you get older, as you continue to do life with this person and building something, you have to be more intentional about keeping that interest there. And so maybe that is scheduling, maybe that's looking for new devices or new games to play or new places and all that kind of things. Just being more intentional about it, because years before when it was new, you were running off of adrenaline. You were just just kind of going for it because your mental state was much different than now that it's this quote unquote old thing. And so I know that a lot of people do struggle with intimacy, and I've had my own struggles with it. And so I don't want to downplay and make it sound like, oh, just do X, Y, Z. But I think we have to also be easier on ourselves, and understanding that it's kind of a natural human transition, a part of life. And with anything, you have to constantly invest in it if you want something out of it. So I actually once heard someone refer to the kind of thinking of that relationship dynamic of, drifting away from your spouse, as the same way. Think about like coworkers that you've had. When you worked with them, y'all were besties, y'all were going to lunch together, you maybe even talked outside of work, and then somebody gets a new job, and now y'all don't talk that much. And now you're not really around each other no much. And you realize, I don't got nothing in common with this person no more. But when you were constantly doing something with them, you were constantly spending time with them at lunch, or doing work together because you were together. You were being intentional essentially with the friendship. That's the same thing, the type of thought process you have to apply to your marriage. The more that I do stuff, the more that I am intentional about it, the more I continue to build that relationship and that connection. But if I expect how I felt, especially if we're talking about premarital sex, then we got to expect that the enemy is going to be coming hard on us to try to make us have that division once we get married. And that's just real. Okay, that's just real. The excitement that he wanted you to have when you were doing wrong is now the opposite of now when you're supposed to be doing it. He wants to cause division now that you're married. And so we have to just be mindful of all the different things that we are transitioning to and experiencing, and attacks that are going to come, and understand that honestly it's not abnormal, but you can do things to make it better.
That is I never thought about that the enemy will use sex to divide your marriage, whereas when you're doing it premarital sex, it's fun and exciting because that's the way the enemy wants you to use it. But when you're in marriage, which is God's covenant, he then adds different distractions, or just the enticement of it, the excitement of it. He plays with it if you're not intentional. I never thought of it like that. So okay, this is something very interesting. One thing that I've always have been curious about, and you're someone who's like, I consider like you got all the things, like you relationship goals, you woman goals, you career goals, you all of these different things, right? But how is it that you're wearing all of these different hats? You're a mother, you're a wife, you're an attorney, and somewhere inside of there, you're a sister, somewhere inside there, you also have to figure out like, how are you going to help you, like how do you wear all of the hats and still be the best version of yourself? Or is that an illusion of, because what I think I'm really getting at is perfection. How, and we're not perfect people. We're not perfect people. Only God is perfect, and He works through us to accomplish exceedingly and abundantly. But with all of these different hats that you wear, how do you keep a level of sanity?
Right, girl, honey, because I got twin 2-year-olds too, right?
That's what, yeah. Like, what does that even? How? What does that even look like?
So to be honest, I feel like part of my pruning process was somewhat ridding me of that type A perfectionist personality that I had. Things have to go my way, and if it's not going my way, I don't want to be here no more. And then also after having my twins, I also had to recognize that things aren't going to be perfect, and I have to be okay with that. I have to be okay with, just for an example, like going to bed and the house is not tidied up at night. It's not clean at night. There's a lot of times where you feel like, I have to do this and I need to do that. And as you transition into these roles, you start to reevaluate your have tos. I should say, I actually learned that phrase from one of my friends who's also a therapist. She's like, evaluate your have tos. Especially as women, we talk a lot about what we have to do. And a lot of the times it's stuff that you told yourself that you have to do. And so for me, I had to start dialing back what I felt like I had to do. And so that meant obviously prioritizing my self-care in place of maybe, for example, doing something for my business that day. Like, you know what? No, I need to be able to go take a bubble bath right now. I'm not going to get on my laptop and do XYZ. I need to go and rest. I need to recuperate. I need to bring myself back to a stable environment mentally. I have my devotional time, which in the mornings, which heavily influences my day. It just gives me a peace in that early mornings. And I feel like it's so cliche as a mom to talk about getting up before everybody gets up for the day, but it really, really does help to have just that solace and silence. And then it also helps me to come towards the day with a softer heart. And I actually often ask God to do that, because when you're type A and you're perfectionist, you're very rigid. And you can't do life with people like that. You just can't. That was one of the things that I had to be rid of. Like you cannot be so rigid with people and do my work, is what God was telling me to do. He's like, I don't even operate like that with you. Like, how much have I let you slide? So you cannot come and be so rigid with people, and that is not what you expect of me, is what he was telling me. So I had to start learning to give more grace, and as I gave other people more grace, I gave myself more grace. I surrendered a lot. I surrender a lot of things to God. I surrender my schedule now. You know, I have a very time management, day, hourly schedule to make sure that I can fit everything I need in there. But just recognizing that if I'm going to live in this season, there's got to be a lot of grace and mercy for myself and for others. And there's frustrating moments. My kids drive me crazy. My husband get on my nerves sometimes. But that's today. That's this hour, and we move on from it.
And that's it. Yeah, I think that's so important, especially for those who are high achievers or goal setters. Like we look at exactly the thing that we want to accomplish, and then we go after that thing, and we do it well, and we can do that times 10 on other things. Then when you get inside of relationships, especially relationships, there people are not projects.
No,
That's one thing
exactly.
my friend
Yes.
told me about that. She was like, Fatima, you're a project manager.
Mm-hmm.
These are
Mm-hmm.
people, these are not
Yeah.
projects. And so when you start to add on that marriage hat, that wife hat, that daughter hat, that all of the hats, right, the career hat, not keeping us on that level of perfection helps to save us. It gives
Mm-hmm.
longer life. It gives us
Mm-hmm.
a deeper meaning. It allows us to be present with those that we love, and as opposed to
Yes.
thinking about the next thing on our to-do list.
Yep.
So I love hearing that, and I think a lot of people are going to appreciate that point. So I know
Yeah.
we're gonna be wrapping up here shortly, but I did have a few more questions. So understanding that perfectionism can be linked to and tied to a high achiever or a goal setter. You typically find that in high achievers, they want things done. We're learning that things are better done than perfect, and that's kind of the transition in the psychological shift that I think a lot of us have to identify with, accept, and continue to remind ourselves of.
Mm-hmm.
But how do you say inside of a marriage, can people overcome the desperation and checking off the box to have marriage? How can people overcome this trending desperation? Because I feel like a lot of people are like, I just want to be married. I just want to be married. And it's like, do you really know what it is? It's not just a piece of paper. I don't believe it's just
Mm-hmm.
a piece of paper.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe what you're saying is just a piece of paper. How do people overcome this desperation to just be married? Why, and what does it cost them, or what could it cost them if they haphazardly jump into marriage without being clear about what it really is?
Mm. So first of all, like you said, marriage is not a piece of paper. Marriage is a covenant, like you said earlier, a covenant. And when you get married, you are proclaiming not just to your spouse, but to God, that I'm going to honor the vows. I'm going to honor my role as a spouse, as a wife, as a husband, and do what God has called me to do in this marriage, regardless of what my spouse does.
Mhm.
And that's a lot to swallow. Um, but that is actually what he has called you to do. And that's why they talk about the three-chord strand. It's you, your spouse, and God. And I think a lot of people think of marriage, like you said, it's just this relationship goals. I get to have somebody. I get to say I'm married. I get to say, oh, that's my husband. And we gonna have these babies, and we gonna, and it's just not real life. Yes, yes, I enjoy the vacations and taking the pictures, and we are building a great life together, but there are ups and downs in marriage. There are times where you may feel like, I want to go. And let me just clarify, I'm never, and I like to always make this disclaimer, I'm never ever telling anybody to stay anywhere where they feel like, number one, that God has gave them permission to leave, and then also that they feel unsafe mentally, physically, or emotionally, whatever the case may be. However, There are a lot of people that run away from marriage at the slightest inconvenience. And I think part of that problem, to be quite honest, I feel like as millennials, as high achievers, we are so used to people, we are so used to doing projects, like you said. We're so used to checking off the box. And so you go into marriage and you think that, oh, I checked off this box and now I'm just going to live this life together. We're going to do X, Y, Z. And then that's just not reality when you're doing life with another human. There will be conflicts. There will be recurring issues. One thing that I was telling my couples in my communication course recently was that 69% of the problems that you have in marriage are never going to be resolved. How do you live with that? Those recurring issues, the socks on the floor, the why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? Oh, why do you drive so fast? Why do you, all those little nuances that can get under your skin. Happy couples learn to realize that people are imperfect. People are imperfect. You're imperfect. I'm imperfect. And so you need to go into marriage recognizing that what you are doing, first of all, is bigger than you. If you're talking about building for a generation, you're talking about building for your kids, creating a legacy. So when I come together with this person, we're creating something that's bigger than us. And then recognizing that it may not be easy. It may not be all peaches and cream every day. There may be moments where you feel very frustrated, but what are you going to do in that moment? Anchor your marriage, anchor your relationship in something bigger than you so that you can push through those moments. When you do only think about it as fleshly, as I just want somebody to be with, I just want somebody to go on vacations with, I just want to say that I'm married, whatever the case may be, then you're not grounding and anchoring your marriage in something much higher than you. So that's number one. Number two, obviously, you never ever want to get married to somebody who you're not supposed to be married to. That can completely shatter your life. There's like a meme or something around on Instagram that talks about how who you marry could be one of the greatest decisions that you ever make in your life, because you can find someone that can truly elevate your life. Like I said, you come together with somebody who shares the same values as you. All start to build wealth. You start to build doing kingdom work, kingdom level work. You impact your community. There's actually statistics that show, for example, how Black men benefit from having a healthy marriage. And so we're talking about things that are much greater than you, how it impacts Black boys. All of those things are so much greater than you. But when you marry somebody who you're not supposed to be with, you can expect the exact opposite of that. Your life comes crumbling down. There are people who end up out of marriage who went in with plenty of money, coming out full of debt. Just stress, and or you come out with children who are scarred because they grew up in a hostile environment because you were never supposed to be with that person. And so I don't personally feel like there's some formula to follow to make that determination, but I think you do need to take heed to the word of God in terms of what he's speaking in your life about whether or not you have peace and his okay about marrying or whoever it is that you think you are going to marry, because you can potentially set yourself back years or set yourself forward years. And so be mindful of which direction you're about to go.